My name's Kim Denison. I've got a Messerschmitt KR200. It's a 1965, but it was actually built in 1963. It was in a showroom for 2 years after it had been built. We bought it, or I bought it in 1970. As the second owner. It was my first car. Bought it for 50 quid. Absolutely perfect. Only because my parents wouldn't let me have a motorbike, banned me from having a motorbike. So they said, you've got to have something safe, something you can put a roof down on, keep you dry, going to work. So we ended up with Messerschmitts. I really wanted a Morgan three-wheeler. In the 70s, when we were looking around, you could pick up a 1920s three-wheeler Morgan for about £80, £100. By the time we got round to actually getting our act together, they'd been discovered and the prices were going up. So we ended up with Messerschmitts. I had wanted to pass my driving test, and I'd tried in a car and failed. So I tried the Messerschmitt. Took it to the test centre in Chelmsford and jumped in there, and the test driver got in the back, which he was really excited about. And we went into Chelmsford and we went through our course and everything. And there's a big roundabout, or there was then a big roundabout called the Army and Navy roundabout in Chelmsford. And we went round there once, and he said to me, oh, let's go round again. It's like looping the loop. So we went round again, we came back. He didn't really do a lot of testing, I must admit. We got back to the test centre and he said, oh, we've passed, yes, not a problem. But he was more interested in the car. He wanted to talk about the car because he'd never been in one. So it was quite exciting for him, pretty exciting for me, because I passed my test. Bought the car in 1970 from a chap who had had it as the first owner. It had been in the garage, as I say, before it was registered, and it had stood in there for 2 years, I think it was, and we believe now that the car is the last Messerschmitt registered in the UK. Bought it for 50 quid, and I've still got the original receipt I had from this chap. Plus, I've still got the original logbook, and it was owned by a chap called James Hendry. So it's always good to keep all the old information on these things. There was a very active, locally, a very active Messerschmitt Owners Club, which was not many miles from where we lived, so joined that in 1970. They released a newsletter that they sent out every month, and I've got one of the first that we had, and this one's December 1970, all in black and white. It was obviously produced on a Roneo or something like that. Very interesting, lots of little topical bits and pieces that went on in the club, and it kept you in touch. It was a real family, and we'd go up to the club at Wickham Bishops quite regularly, and there you could talk about the cars, what was going wrong. You could hire tools or borrow tools. You knew then where to get your parts. And over the years now, the Messerschmitt Owners Club has built up a huge stock of parts, lots of little engineering companies, and now I've got the latest issue of Cabin News. This one's for September, October, completely different, but it's then got in the back a massive selection of all the parts that you can buy through them, and also the tools you can hire. I understand now that there are more parts now for a Messerschmitt than there was back in the 70s when we first got ours. It was all rather hit and miss to get hold of these. I've got a a couple of interesting photographs as well, which were taken. We went along to the 40th anniversary. It was the 40th Jubilee meet for Messerschmitts at Brands Hatch. And I went along there with my son and my mother, my mother was really proud of the car. She drove it a lot and was very enthusiastic, very much enjoyed it. So yeah, I've got pictures of, you know, us at the meeting at Brands Hatch. Huge selection of Messerschmitts went along, four-wheelers as well as the three-wheelers. And no doubt my son will take on the mantle of looking after it long after I'm gone. So it'll be interesting to see where it actually ends up. The four-wheelers, incidentally, I mean, that's quite interesting. The four-wheelers, there were not many of those bought into this country. I think originally it was about 20 or 40 bought into this country. And now there's probably a lot more over here, but they are worth an absolute fortune. Very rare to see them, very rare for collectors, so they're picking up big money these days. And the little three-wheelers actually are still picking up pretty good money for what they are. I've had the car for 47 years now, and as it was my first vehicle, I had it when I was an apprentice. I was taking an apprenticeship not far from home. I used to drive it there every day. It was a good little vehicle to go. One day I was going along the road and I started to overtake a big articulated lorry. And it was before the days they now have these big bars down the side, so you can't go under these trucks, but then you could. And I was overtaking the lorry, and there's not a lot of power in the Messerschmitt. They're a little 200cc vehicle. I got halfway past him and then realised there was cars coming the other way, and I just didn't have enough power to get past him. So I tucked underneath the trailer, right underneath, until the cars had passed. And after they'd passed, I came out and I remember distinctly looking at his wing mirror, big wing mirror, and I saw this guy's face, and his eyes just were so wide that I'd come from underneath his truck and then was just cruising past to go past and off to work. So yeah, they are brilliant. Over the time we had in the family, my mother had one, my father had one, and I had one. And we used to mix them about, and we had other cars too, but you could always rely on the Messerschmitt to start most days, and you'd go through all sorts of things. We could go through the snow, not brilliant in the snow. I remember one time I got to a T-junction and I couldn't stop the car spinning, and it just sat there just going around in circles because the grip was all on the back wheel and the fronts were getting stuck in the snow. So we used to do little sort of snow angels, but in a Messerschmitt, which was quite cool. Well, this is my little Messerschmitt, KR200, had for 47 years. The first owner, because these are usually a clear or tinted dome, got rather hot. So in his wisdom, he decided to paint the inside to keep the heat out. So we've never actually taken the paint off there, so we've left it. So that's how you see it, but normally these will be clear, a clear dome. This is how you get into these beasts. This particular one, there's quite a few of them, have had this type of upholstery. This is as it is. This is the original upholstery. They were made with this mock snakeskin. This is getting a little bit tired here. I've now got a whole set of new upholstery for this. Found a chap in France who specialises in Messerschmitts. He collects them and he makes upholstery for Messerschmitts. So I ordered it and it's come, he bought it over from France, all flat packed, ready to go. But I've just got to find an upholsterer to do it and get it back up to scratch. The car itself was had a fair bit of work done to it. about 1998, something like that, by somebody in the Messerschmitt Owners Club, and renovated it. So we spent quite a lot of time on it and doing up the engine. It's interesting with the Messerschmitt. It's effectively you've got a little 200 cc gearbox engine in the back, and the gearbox is run through a teleflex cable, so it's really like a motor scooter engine. And then this teleflex cable, you've just got your gears on a cable that you move backwards and forwards. Really easy to drive and quite a lot of fun. This unclips. You can see from here that you can fit 2 people in the back if you feel so disposed. It's not particularly fast though. This is the beast. It's a 200cc Sachs engine, air cooled, and under here it's always useful, tucked away. Got the spare wheel under there. The interesting part here is the black box where it holds all the electronics, and it was quite sophisticated for the time. A lot of people didn't understand how it all worked, but the gurus decided in the end that it wasn't as difficult to work out. But I've never touched anything on there. I'd leave that to greater minds than mine. The Messerschmitt is one of those vehicles that everybody wants to stop and talk to you about, and they always regale stories of somebody who's had one, or they have had one themselves. It's just an extraordinary little vehicle that it incites people to come along and discuss everything. I also remember when I was young, I went to a beach party, and driving along the long road to Aldeburgh, I was driving along there and I heard a motorbike or a little scooter behind, and I remember this chap grabbing hold of the parcel rack, and I dragged him all the way along the seafront until we got to this, it was a party, a beach party with big everything, and it was quite extraordinary that even then there weren't many of the Messerschmitts about, but they were a good laugh. These days we go to some of these events, coffee and cars, which have become quite popular now, that you can turn up at wherever they hold the events. You turn up in whatever car you've got, doesn't matter whether you're Ferrari or whether you've got a Messerschmitt, you get there, everybody, it's that love of vehicles that everybody gets into, so you're up with the bonnet and talking about all the bits and pieces within it.